on how to score 760 on the GMAT. My name is Rajat Sudana. I'm one of the co-founders of e-GMAT, and I'm going to be your main host today. I have about 97 students here in the webinar. I do expect this number, as I said earlier, to go up to 120. And if you've just joined, welcome to this webinar. My goal in this webinar, I have 3 goals in this webinar. Number one, I want to make sure that that each one of you understands how to go about creating your own personalized study plan, and how each one of you knows what you need to study, what kind of effort you need to put in, and then where do you need to put in that effort. I had a lot of people ask me this question in the chat. You guys saw that. Hey, how long will it take for me to reach a certain score? What's the syllabus that I need to worry on? Should I be studying everything? Should I not be studying everything? At the end of this webinar, each one of you will have a framework to answer that question for you. And the last aspect, for you, is really critical for me. So you'll be able to really see what you need to focus on, because each one of you has distinct needs, and we'll cater to those needs. And that's where technology enables us to do this in a beautiful way. Well, now, kind of ask a couple of other questions, since we have a lot of you over here. So how many of you are you planning to take the GMAT Focus Edition? So we asked this question to our students some time back. We actually had a survey, but how many of you are planning to take the current GMAT? How many of you are planning to take the GMAT Focus Edition? How many of you are uncertain? I'm going to remove broadcast results so that you can put your answers in. Okay, how many of you plan to take which one? I have a total of 67 responses out of 120 students. The poll on the top right-hand corner, for those of you who've just joined, I have 122 folks here right now. Which exam do you want to take? The current GMAT, the Focus Edition, or if you're unsure, please mention that you're unsure. I have about 76 responses. Let's get to about 90 responses before I broadcast the results. 78 responses, 79. All right, 81, 84. I'm going to actually end the poll. I'm going to broadcast results so we can really see. 60% of you, give or take, want to take the current GMAT, but 8% on the Focus Edition, and 33% are unsure. I'm going to put in a new chat pod here. Those of you who are unsure, what are your primary reasons? Why are you unsure? What information are you looking for? This is just for the third group over here, the 28 folks who said they're unsure. Didn't know there was a Focus Edition till now. Okay. All right. If you didn't know there was a Focus Edition, then, top left-hand corner, article number 2, Introduction to Focus Edition, is what you're looking for. By the way, those of you who are planning to take the Focus Edition, I just released an article on how to create a study plan for your GMAT Focus Edition. Number 4 is what you want to read. Okay. You don't know the difference. Again, article number 2, top left-hand corner, is what you really need to know. If you're planning to apply after a year, the Focus Edition, every university out there will accept it. Every university out there acknowledges that it's a much better exam than the current GMAT. Harvard and Wharton not accepting it this year because they don't want to cause confusion, but they're going to accept it the next year. So if you're planning next year, definitely look at that. All right. Is this webinar primarily about the Focus Edition? No, the webinar is about how do you get to a certain GMAT score. It'll apply equally well to the Focus Edition as well as to the current GMAT. It's primarily focused on the current GMAT, but you can apply the same principles to the Focus Edition as well. All right. Yes, while people also accept the Focus Edition. Absolutely. Most likely, based on my discussions with the folks at GMAC, probably around the 27th of October is when you can start taking the Focus Edition. Okay. All right, good. Thank you very much. All right. So which exam do you prefer? We saw that. When do you plan to take the test? About 43% of you are aiming to take the test they haven't taken the data as of yet. We have about 20% who have planning to take the test within 30 days. I'm going to ask a couple of other questions, and this is primarily around the current GMAT. What's your target GMAT score? I don't have this for the focus edition because not enough people are planning to take the focus edition as of now, so it didn't make sense. So apologies for those of you who are planning to take the focus edition, but you can really see we have most of the folks over here aiming for higher scores. Half of you are aiming for that 730 to 750 bracket, about 20% in that 760 or higher, and then we also have not 22%, very similar number, that 710, 720, and about 4% of you are in that 600 to 700 bracket. Again, I expect more participation. I have 144 students here in the webinar. I'm going to hide this, and then let me ask another question. What's your current score? And this one's going to be interesting because I want to see where folks are right now. And I'm going to make sure we don't overlap. And it's fun to see data come in real time, and when you have so much data in there. If you don't know your current score, you can choose that option, and we'll help you define your current score. All right. About 92 students who've responded to this. So about 37% of you don't know your current score. Definitely take a mock test. And if you haven't taken one, take a Sigma X mock test. You'll not only get your current score, but you'll also get a very detailed breakdown of your current abilities, something that you won't get from any other mock test, including the official mocks. But then you can see the biggest group is in the 400 to 500 range, 510 to 550, the next biggest group. And then as we go down, we get to that 5% bracket where we have 660 to 700, and that's 660 to 700, but 5 folks there, 710, 720, we have about 6 folks there as well. So if you're in this bracket, the last 2 groups, you need a very specialized solution. You'll actually see an example of that. If you are in the groups above 610, 650, 560, 600, you'd really see that the solutions that are there, you'll see examples of those as well in this webinar. All right. Thank you very much for sharing this data with us. I know saying where you are is not easy. Again, we have phenomenal free trial. If you're an e-GMAT student, you have access to the best course in the world. If you're a prospect, take a look at our free trial, take a look at our blog, and see if this makes sense for you. I'm going to hide this. And with that, we have some upcoming free webinars. We host 2 webinars every week. At least 2 webinars is what I would say. We have one on GMAT algebra that is tomorrow, exactly 24 hours from now. In this, we're going to talk about inequalities and absolute value. If you need help in that area, definitely attend that. And if you need help in critical reasoning, I'm going to be hosting a webinar on pre-thinking next week. It's exactly a week from now. Definitely check that out as well. With that, let's go right into the webinar pane. I'm going to wait for about 4 seconds or so to let the screen settle down. The screen will have settled down for you, or by now. If you see a presentation that says, how do you score 95th percentile or better, then the screen has settled down for you. Otherwise, you should just wait probably about 5 seconds or so. Do you see something which says, how do you score 95th percentile or better on the GMAT? All right, pretty much everyone sees that. If you're not seeing that, then just join again. Okay. Now, I have a question. Kahu says, do you personally suggest the Focus Edition? Kahu, you have mocks for both the current GMAT as well as the Focus Edition. So I'd recommend take a mock test and then send that to us, and we can help you make a decision. It just depends on what's good for you as an individual. Where can you find mocks? Again, write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com, and I'll be happy to answer these questions and more such questions towards the end overall. Okay. All right. So the agenda, we have three very high level agenda points. So in the first part, I'm going to talk about the fundamentals of the GMAT. I'm going to really talk about how does the GMAT work, because this kind of lays the foundation of how should you prepare for the GMAT. I'm going to spend about 20 minutes doing this. Now, as we do this, we're going to answer questions such as how should you worry about the first 10 questions? Are they important? If so, how should you approach them? Some people have questions about should I spend more time on the first 10 questions? We should also really look at people have concerns about why should I take the first mock if I'm not prepared? What insights does it give, and what value does it tell me? And as we understand the fundamentals of the GMAT, it'll tell you why and how each one of you needs a personalized study plan. So with one in place, we're going to go into how do you build your personalized study plan. We're going to take two case studies, one for someone who's at a 660, and how did that person go to a 750, the other one someone who's at a slightly lower score, and how did they approach their GMAT preparation. You're going to be able to really see how using insights from the relative strengths and weaknesses, they personalize their study strategies, and how each one of them was able to get to their target score. One of them was able to get to the target score in about 8 weeks, the other one took about 9.5 to 10 weeks. And why? But they spend their time on very, very different things. And why is that valuable? Why is that logical? You're going to be able to see that. And then we're going to really talk about, once you have that, okay, how do you build your own success journey? What metrics should you track? How do you know if you're studying the right way without taking mock tests? Because taking a mock test is very exhausting. There are only so many good mock tests out there. Okay, so that's something. Sai, this is the email that you said is the correct email. I'm sorry if I messed up, then my bad. So this is what you said is the correct email. Let me just make sure everyone has that. So, and thank you for correcting me. That helps. All right. So with that, let's move forward. Let's start with the fundamentals of the GMAT. And then if there's one thing that I can tell you with regards to the GMAT, then it is that acing the GMAT is about building ability. And the reason why, I want you to have that as a takeaway is because a lot of people, when they start worrying about the GMAT, what they really think about is essentially, hey, how can I answer questions quickly? What strategy should I look at with regards to getting to the answer really, really fast? Should I attempt quant or verbal or IR up front? What should be my skipping strategy? How can I build up stamina to sustain through this 2 hour, about 3 hour long exam? Those things, are important. And let me just ask you this question over here, just right off the bat. How many of you are worried about timing on the GMAT? And are very worried. Well, I shouldn't say that worried, because worried is an absolute term, or very worried about timing on the GMAT, just very worried. At 72% or so. You shouldn't be, given where you are. Timing is something that you should worry about if you're within 30 to 40 points of your GMAT score and your score is limited by timing. Only then you should be worried about timing. I can tell you for 80% of the people, their scores are ability limited and not timing limited. It's only for 20% at most that the timing starts to be an issue. And even then, that accounts for about 20 to 30 points of their, the reduction of 20 to 30 points overall. So when it comes to acing the GMAT, this is your 80, and all of this combined is your 20. This 20 is important, but only if this 80 is taken care of. That if this 80 isn't taken care of, then that 20 is not relevant at all. Okay. All right. So what is ability? Ability on the GMAT's not an abstract term. It's a very numerical concept. It's a very measured concept. So I'm going to really define that measurement of ability on the GMAT, and how does the GMAT use that. So all of us know accuracy, and accuracy as a numerical concept is fairly simple to understand. Accuracy is, when you take a quiz, let's say you take a 10-question quiz, you get 8 out of those 10 questions correctly, your accuracy is 80%. It's an absolute number. It doesn't tell you how well you've done compared to others. So if that quiz has easy, medium questions, if that 10-question quiz has the easy, medium question, then you got 80% accuracy, then your ability measure over here would be about 50th percentile. If, on the other hand, if that quiz had medium hard questions, then your ability measure would be about 80th percentile. If that quiz had hard questions, then your ability measure would be 97th percentile. And that is the ability. It tells you how good you are compared to others, and that's what I want to make sure that you keep in mind on the GMAT. GMAT's test of ability. Ability is a true measure. And to just prove my point, what I'm going to really just tell you is how does I'm going to simulate a mock test. Everyone knows GMAT's a computer adaptive test. We have two students over here, student one and student two. On the x-axis, we have question number. So we are going from question number 1 to question number 6 over here. On the y-axis, we have difficulty level. So the higher we go on y-axis, the more challenging a question becomes. So let's kind of see how we go about doing this. Okay. So student one or case one gets the first two questions right. So it gets the first question. First question is usually around that median difficulty level. As you can see, there's this median difficulty level horizontal line over here. Gets the first question right. As a result, he gets the second question, which is a bit more challenging. How can we make that claim? Because you can see we are going slightly higher on the y-axis. Gets the second question right as well. As a result, gets the third question that's really challenging. It's much more challenging, and you can see we are going further on the y-axis when it comes to question number 3. He gets a third question wrong. As a result, gets the fourth question, which is with the difficulty level of which is between that of question number 3 and question number 2. How do you get that again? Draw horizontal lines from 3 and 2. You can see 4 is between that. Okay, gets the fourth question correct. Gets the fifth question slightly challenging, gets that wrong. So he gets 3 out of 5 questions correct. Student 2 or case 2 gets the first question, median difficulty level, gets that wrong. Gets a second question, much easier, gets that right. Gets a third question, slightly more challenging, gets that wrong. Gets the fourth question, which is easier, gets that right, and gets the fifth question right as well. Now, if I were to end the test over here and say that this was just a 5-question test, and let's kind of figure out who's doing better, who do you think would get a higher score if I were to end the test at question number 5? Student 1 or student 2? Okay, guys, put your poll responses there. Do not put it in the Q&A pod. Q&A pod is for your questions, and not for your responses to my questions. Okay. All right, I have about 100 responses. Thank you very much. Out of 157 students, let me end the poll and broadcast the results. 84% of you think student 1's doing better. About 16% of you think student 2 is doing better. All right. So those of you who think student 1's doing better, what's your reasoning? What's your justification for this? Why do you think student 1 would get a higher score? Okay, simplify it. Don't use the term I just talked about. They got more hard questions correct. Absolutely. That's I like that explanation a lot because it just goes to the fundamental thinking of how the GMAT actually works. Can you quantify when you say more hard questions correct? Can you put some numbers there as well? Comparative numbers. LOD's level of difficulty, yes, is higher, yes. Better in answering hard questions. So essentially, if you look at this over here, both of them had 60% accuracy, but every question that case 1 or student 1 answered was either at the average difficulty level or above the average difficulty level. Student 2 or case 2 did not get any question above the average difficulty level. He only got one question at the average difficulty level. Okay. Again, accuracy is same for both of them. 3 out of 5 questions correctly, 60%. But because each question carried more points, so student 1 definitely would do a lot better. Okay. In fact, if there were, a scaled weighted rank that were visible to us, student 1's score would probably be 2.25 times higher than that of student 2's score with identical accuracy. Okay. I want to ask you this question. Did student 2 even get a chance to, did the test even serve difficult questions too? Or rather, I think you guys can see that. Why do you think the test, why do you think the test did not even serve difficult questions to student 2? Because he failed on the medium, since it's adaptive. Because he started poorly, yes. It's not about just the first question, it's also about the following questions. AB says, how is it that answering correct gets you to a higher level more than answering wrong? Then in case one, there is a larger fall as compared to other wrong answers. I don't know where do you see a larger fall. AB, you'll have to clarify that question for me. Okay, but the thing that I want to make sure that you understand is that how many of you, and thank you for that, how many of you, when you think about the GMAT, how the GMAT works, how many of you have been told that, hey, it's really complex, don't try understanding how the GMAT works? Now, one thing that I want to tell you is that when it comes to the GMAT, it's a very logical test. And if you've ever hired anyone, then you can really understand how the GMAT actually works. How many of you have hired people? Okay, a few of you have. Um, Even if you haven't hired anyone, many of you've gone through the process of hiring, and you're very logical, so you'd be able to figure out how this works. So let's say we have an organization uh, where essentially you've got to place people, and there are five positions where you can place people on. The lowest one is that of an analyst. The highest one is that of an executive vice president. Your job is to place folks uh, in this organization. So let's say you actually start with medium level questions, and which are director level questions, and this particular candidate gets the first three questions right. What is your logical? What are you going to do next? This guy got the first three questions, which are director level, and he got those right. Okay, you increase the difficulty. You start posing that VP level questions. Okay, now this guy gets two VP level questions right, and then gets one VP level question wrong. What's going to be your next question? Are you going to reduce back or VP level? I would keep it at VP level because I already know he's pretty okay at director level and he's gotten two out of those three questions right. So I keep it at VP level. And then let's say I give him another VP level question and he gets that right. Now, what would you do? You would go for EVP. Why? Because you know he seems to be pretty okay at VP level. And at an EVP level, I can really figure this out. Now, you do EVP level. This is how he performs. Now, you have to make a judgment for this particular person. Is he at an EVP level? Is he at a VP level? First of all, is he a good candidate? Yes or no? Is he a good candidate? Yes or no? Yes. Now, is he at EVP level or at a VP level? Yes, at VP. Definitely yes at VP. He's somewhere between EVP and VP. He's not at the top end of EVP. He probably is at okay at the lower end of EVP or the top end of VP. That's the judgment that you would make. That's the same judgment that the GMAT actually makes. That's exactly how the GMAT works. The VP EVP level questions are your hard questions. The VP level questions are your medium hard questions. The director level questions are your medium questions. The manager level questions are your easy medium, and the analyst level questions are your easy questions overall. That's exactly how it works. Now, can you get some director level questions wrong? Let's kind of look at this over here. And I'm going to erase everything. If you get the first question wrong, that's still okay. It'll still continue. Now, just 3 questions. What's your judgment of this person here? No, there's no judgment. You'd really probably just put in another director level question again. If he gets that right, then you'd obviously go to the VP level. Okay. So the point that I'm trying to make is even when you get the first question wrong, you get the opportunity to bounce back as long as you make a mistake. Okay. Even if you get the first question wrong over here, sorry about that. Even if you get the first question wrong over here, you get the manager level question, you get 2 of these questions right, then you come back at a director level, you get 2 of these right, and you go back to the VP level. The test gives you ample opportunity to bounce back. If you get 3 wrong, then yes, you have a problem, my friend. Then I'm very certain you don't belong to that level if you get 3 wrong. Okay. That's how we as humans would behave. That's how the test behaves. It's no different than that. It's a very, very logical test. Okay. So when it comes to acing the GMAT, the 2 takeaways that you have, the 2 challenges that you need to overcome are these. One is to make sure the test serves difficult questions to you. Why? Because difficult questions are worth twice as much as medium questions, or about 4 times as much as easy questions. And then the second thing is to answer them correctly. Why? Because that's the only way you'll continue to get difficult questions served to you. Okay. Munindra has a question: should you be spending more time on initial questions? And we'll answer that question in a time. Smriti has a question. She's taking the e-GMAT course. She's written to support, but she hasn't gotten a response. Smriti, that should not be the case. Otherwise, just write to me, and I'd make sure that's the case. Our SLA is about 24 hours. So yeah, just write to me. All right. Takeaway: your GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. Again, do you need to achieve 100% accuracy on difficult questions? No, 70% accuracy will put you at 90th percentile, 75% will put you at 95th percentile, and about 80% accuracy will get you right there to about 98 to 99 percentile ability or 99 percentile score. Now, here are some more data points with regards to telling you that the GMAT is a test of ability. This is an ESR screenshot of an earlier version of the GMAT, which was a 2018 version. And the reason why I like that version is because when the official mocks during that time gave us a lot of insights about how the GMAT works. The current GMAT works exactly the same way. It just has fewer experimental questions, and hence it has fewer questions. So here's the verbal section for 2 individual students. Both these students, if you look at question numbers 11 to 41, they seem very, very similar. I'm going to just zoom in this page so that you can really see this with a bit more detail. The only difference over here is this guy has gotten the first 2 questions wrong. Now, if you were to look at these scores through a lens of accuracy, you'd expect very, very similar scores. But if you understand how the adaptive algorithm works, you'd probably not be surprised to see that the first student got a V43, which is 97 percentile. What the test told him was that, hey, my friend, you are amongst the top 6,000 students worldwide who on the verbal section of the GMAT. This guy got a V32, which was 65th percentile, which means the test told him is there are 70,000 people worldwide who are just as good or better than you. Okay. Now, when you look at this, how many of you think that that the GMAT's not forgiving, or the GMAT is really harsh? So this question says, is the GMAT forgiving? Yes or no? And I want you to really answer this question. Is the GMAT forgiving? Yes or no? Is the GMAT forgiving? Come on, I need about 100 responses. I have about 70 responses. It's judgment time. It's applying what you've just learned. Do you think the GMAT's forgiving? Do you think it's not? 80 odd responses. I need 20 more responses. I have about 154 students here. 86. Let's get to 90 before I broadcast results. 89. All right, 91. Let me end the poll, broadcast results. 71% of you think that the GMAT's not forgiving. 28% think that the GMAT is forgiving. The GMAT's actually really, really forgiving. Let me just be very, very clear. It's very forgiving as a test. Compared to the flat tests, such as the CAT or the GRE. GRE is a semi-flat test, but the CAT, which is the Indian version of the GMAT, is not forgiving at all. Why? Because the GMAT allows you to come back. It allows you to make mistakes. When you think about this guy got 9 out of 41 questions wrong, still got 97 percentile. Is that a sign of a harsh test? Almost a quarter of questions wrong and still be amongst the top 3 percentile of test takers. Is that a harsh test? Okay. No response on the short answer pod? It's not a harsh test. It's a very forgiving test. And is it required to complete all questions? Yes. I don't know why you won't just randomly mark all questions. It usually is way better. Okay. Okay. So how do we explain the other guy's test? So let's kind of understand how we explain the other guy's response. Okay. It's not even harsh when it comes to the first few questions, my friend. Let me just tell you why. So this student 2 got the first question wrong. Remember, first question is a 50th percentile question. How do people get it right? So he got a question which was a 30th percentile question, which means 7 out of 10 people get it right. Okay, he got that wrong as well. Now, what is the probability? Let me ask you this. What is the probability that a 90th percentile guy would get a question that half the people get right wrong, and then get a question that that 7 out of 10 people get answer correctly incorrect, one after the other? What is the probability that a 90th percentile student would get a 50th percentile and a 30th percentile question wrong, or a medium difficulty and an easy medium question wrong, one after the other? How low? How low? Any quant waves over here? Anyone who understands probability distributions? If you kind of understand probability distribution, if you use those lookup tables, the answer to that would be less than 1 in 10,000. That a 90th percentile person would get that wrong. Okay, don't say less than half. Less than half is still a very high probability. Okay, that's less than 1 in 10,000 for a 90th percentile. At this point, when you get the second question wrong over here, I am 99% certain my confidence interval is way better than 99%, where that you do not belong in the 90th percentile. In fact, I'm about 85% certain that you don't even belong in the 50th percentile based on the data that I have on you right now. So the next question that he gets, the third question that he gets, is that of a 15th percentile. He gets that right. Then he gets a 20th percentile, gets that right. 27th percentile gets that right. 36th percentile gets that right. So essentially the difficulty level goes up slowly over here. And then it does by 8th question, he gets to the 80th, 85th percentile question. And this is where the test really starts to help him. But then he starts to make mistakes again. So he kind of comes down over here, settles down at 70th percentile over here. Okay. So the test did give him an opportunity to come back in this case. Right now at this point, his judgment was 15th percentile. He was actually able to get to about a 70th percentile. Okay. So then the question that you have to ask is, if we can't figure out how how to evaluate ourselves using or 65th percentile to be very precise, my bad. If we can't figure out how to evaluate ourselves using accuracy, how do we figure out how to evaluate ourselves? And the answer to that is ability scores. Okay. So how many of you have seen an ESR? Let me put in a yes, no question here. How many of you have seen an enhanced score report? An ESR. For those of you who've taken the GMAT, you probably know what an ESR is. If you haven't taken the GMAT, if you've taken a Sigma X mock, we give an ESR-like analysis. It tells you the reason behind your score. It tells you how good you are in SCC, RRC, arithmetic algebra. The new GMAT Focus edition has ESR integrated. It's a fabulous. I mean, it gives you about 5 times the official mocks. Even the free ones give you about 5 times as many data points as the mocks for the current GMAT do. Okay. The ESR is called the Enhanced Score Report. We'll share an article on what that is. So, but essentially, what this tells you is when we looked at their ESRs, both of these were e-GMATers. Student one had ability scores of 95th percentile in SC, 95th percentile in CR, and 87th percentile in RC. Student two had very different ability scores. Now, when you look at these students through the lens of ability, do they appear very different? Do they appear very different? Yeah, they do, right? And this is how the GMAT looks at it. It first evaluates your ability in SC, CR, and RC. And then by combining those ability scores, okay, it then tells you what is your target score. When I say worry about building ability, then this is what I'm really talking about as to understand how would you go about building ability. So how do you take those marks? There is a link that I'm sharing in uh, in the Q&A part. Renata, you asked us. I think many other folks would need this as well. Okay. All right. So when you look at, so always ask yourself, what ability scores do I have when you take a mock test? Not analytical ability in various subsections. Okay. Again, why is that important? Because the GMAT score is governed by your ability to answer difficult questions correctly. So then the question comes, what ability scores does the GMAT measure? There are 2 scores in quant, arithmetic and algebra geometry, and 3 in verbal. If you look at the GMAT focus, it has a different set of ability scores. You have ability scores in data insights, you have and in quant as well as in verbal. So the number of ability scores actually is about 8 ability scores. If you read my article on how do you build a GMAT focus study plan, you'd see all of those. Okay. Now, here's something which is very interesting. Each of these subsections is independent, which means your SCCR and RC ability scores don't interact a whole lot. Each of these subsections has an equal weight. So a lot of people think RC is way more important than SC or CR. Not the case. They all have equal weights. The other thing which is really interesting is that you do need a target ability for each subsection. That's really important overall. Okay. Now, points number 1, 2, and 3 talk about the independence piece. And now, why do you need a target ability for each subsection? Because essentially, your starting ability in each subsection is going to be different, and there are many ways to achieve a certain score. So, for those of you who are aiming for a V40, there are about 18 ways to get to a V40, and depending on what your natural strengths and weaknesses are, we can figure out the most optimal way. And the most optimal way is one that takes the least amount of time and that has the highest probability of success for you. Okay. The last 2 points are really important. Despite the independence of this, the way you go about building ability, the things that you do in SC to go from a 40th percentile to a 90th percentile are are absolutely identical to the things that you're going to do in number properties to go from 40th to 90th percentile. The process of building ability is very similar. And the other pieces, each one of you has your own strengths and weaknesses. And so your starting points on each subsection will likely be very different. Okay. So if you think about it, these are 5 subsections, and each of these subsections could have, bands of ability. Let's say each of these subsections has 5 bands of ability. There are 25 possible areas where you guys can be, and that leads to a hell lot of permutations in terms of where each one of you is. So it's really important that you take a starting mock which gives you these ability scores so that you know where you are. Does my low ability in one section affect? No. So quant and verbal are completely independent. SC and CR are completely independent, or they're more or less independent. It doesn't affect the difficulty level a whole lot in the other one. Okay. So the next question that you have to ask yourself when you're building a study plan, trying to estimate how long it will take for you to study is, what ability scores are you aiming for in these areas? Okay. This is really important. You've got to ask yourself this question. Now, I'm going to share some more insights, some more data points to back my claims. So here's an example of a student who's improved from a V17 to a V40, a Q44 to a Q48, overall from a 520 to a 710, 190 point score improvement. And you can really see his V40 score, which is 91st percentile, is composed of these three subsectional abilities: 94th percentile in SC, 79 and 73rd percentile in CR and RC. Okay. Now you can also see the strategy that he applied. So there's 41 questions. You can see the first set of questions, when the questions were mostly medium, he got most of them right. As the questions became more challenging, he still got a significant proportion of them right. And then here it was primarily hard questions. Here it was primarily hard questions, but he still maintained about 50% accuracy. And that enabled him to get to a V40. This is what we call as a build, maintain strategy overall. Okay. Again, the GMAT is forgiving as long as you make mistakes in hard questions. They're very similar to when you think about that hiring proposition that we did. As long as you make mistakes in an EVP level, you'll still get a really great score. Okay, as long as you get EVP level questions and you make mistakes over there. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. All right. So now I want you to answer this question overall. And I wanted to answer this question. And so each one of these, there are three questions here. Do the first 10 questions matter? Should you approach them differently? Should you spend more time? So again, no, don't answer yet, please. There are three questions. I need three answers. So you can write why. You can write why and and n. So just that way. Why and why. YNN. Let's see a few more responses. All right. So let me just, as you can see, there are lots and lots of different sites. You have a lot of YNN. You have a lot of YYN as well. You have someone who answered Y and then three N's. I don't know what's the last N for. But you also have a few of YYY, which means yes, they matter. Yes, you should approach them differently. Yes, you should spend time on the first 10 questions. So I'll tell you my answers here. Do they matter? Yes, every question matters. The first one matters slightly more, and so that's there. Okay, should you approach them differently? Absolutely not. That is really harmful. Should you spend more time? No, that would actually hurt you. And let me kind of explain that. Now, here's a piece that I want to make sure you understand. Your GMAT, you win or ace the GMAT during your prep phase. Your exam is merely a representation of your preparation. A lot of people, when they go into the exam, they think, I'm going to really do better than my preparation. I'm actually going to get those last 20, 25, 30 points, 20, 30 points, which I've never been able to do on my mocks, but maybe I'm going to tweak my strategies slightly here or there to get those last 20, 30 points. Has anyone done that overall to really say, hey, I'm sure a few of you, there are about 145 students here. How did that turn out for you when you do that? Very bad, not good at all. Yes, it never ends well when you do that. Your GMAT attempt has to be a reflection of how you prepared. Don't try and do crazy things on the test. It will hurt you. The GMAT, even though it's a very forgiving exam, can mess with your brain. Okay. So you win or ace the GMAT during your prep phase. Your score is merely a reflection of how well you prepared. What I'm trying to say is, if you're truly a 90th percentile student, you will have these stats overall. Where if you're a 90th percentile student in SC, then you'll have 90% accuracy in medium level questions. You'll have 80% accuracy in medium hard and 65% accuracy in hard questions. All right. So what this means is, if in the first 10 questions, which majority of them are likely to be medium, you're going to answer them correctly anyway if you go the regular way. What happens when you try and give something special importance is that you kind of look at a question, you kind of think of angles that you normally don't think of. And when you think of angles that you normally don't think of, you kind of toggle between answer choices, even on medium questions, and you end up choosing the wrong answer. Has anyone done that? Been extra careful with a relatively simple question and then messed that up because you chose the correct answer and then went back? Don't do that. It is harmful. So what happens when you give the first 10 questions special importance is these stats, which were true in your prep phase, they no longer apply. They go out of the window. And that's when you get those bad scores. Okay. It's human tendency, let me just be very clear, to do this, but don't do this. If you think about how some of the best athletes go and perform in matches, they perform in matches, they practiced a few weeks before the tournaments, or it's very similar to how they're going to behave in matches. They simulate those matches in their head, and they kind of practice that. And then when they go and practice, they do just that. They just uh, uh, essentially relive that practice. That's what your test needs to be. So don't worry about the first 10, because if there are medium questions, you're going to do well anyway. That's what you prepared. If your stats show on the e-GMAT platform or any other platform that you have 90% accuracy on medium questions, it's going to manifest itself on the test as well. Okay. Now, if there is one hard question, if there's one EVP level question that comes in the first 10 and you get that wrong, do you really think the test is going to hold that negatively against you? No. The test knows it's an EVP level question. So don't worry about it. Okay. So again, remember this. Do the first 10 matter? Yes, but it shouldn't matter to you. Okay. Prepare well. There's a question about when will we release the GMAT Focus. So we're going to release a phenomenal course in about 4 days or so, and everyone who's an e-GMATer will get upgraded free of charge. You won't have to buy a second course. So don't worry about this. At e-GMAT, every new feature comes to you free of charge. Okay. The other thing I want to tell you is everyone make mistakes. These people, Magdalena got a V48, which is better than 99 percentile on verbal. She made mistakes. Pratik got a V47. He made mistakes, but they made mistakes on hard questions. They made mistakes on when the test served them hard questions, not on medium. Okay, and because their preparation was like this. All right, so the GMAT is a forgiving test as long as you make mistakes on a hard question. So prepare well. That's all that I would say. So takeaways: focus on building ability. Approach all questions as you would do in practice. So practice, the way you would take a test. Be serious. Okay. So then comes the next piece: personalized study plan. What's the job of a personalized study plan? Okay, roadmap to get you where you want to be. It shortens your study time. It does do that. It assesses your weak areas. It helps you improve your weaknesses. Good. Helps maintain discipline. That's really important. Absolutely, yes. It builds on existing abilities and rectifies weaknesses. Absolutely. It's efficient. Yes. Good. So each one of you has some ideas of critical aspects of what a PSP or a personalized study plan is. That's really good. Time is a finite commodity and needs to be used efficiently. I really like how elaborate that response is. Really, really like. Okay. Great. And I'll let you read this while I respond to this question. How many questions should be correct to get to a V47? So you can make about 4 mistakes and still get to a V47. It should fit to your daily schedule. That's a really critical point. So at e-GMAT, a personalized study plan answers these questions. How will you reach your target GMAT score? Which means what is the path for you given your starting abilities? The second question, and then each of these questions is important, and each successive question is more important than the preceding one. Okay. So the second question is how much time do you need to put in? So how many hours? When I say time, it's just given your commitment on weekdays and weekends, what you've said, how many hours do you need to get to your target GMAT score? And then the third piece is where do you need to put in that time? So which stage of learning in number properties, in algebra, in sentence correction, and critical reasoning do you need to put in that time? So it kind of fills that matrix. You'll see us filling that for you. Okay. Right. And to demonstrate that, we're going to take the case study approach, which you're going to see in business schools, to tell you how should you build your study plan. So we're going to take two students, Rafaela and Ayush. Ayush at a six, as I said, you'd have one student, 650 and 700, the other one at a 600. So it represents both segments here with, people in that 500 to 600, 400 to 500 bracket. It represents those. And then it represents those who are at the 600 as well. So by the way, folks in the 500 to 600, if we had two very recent success stories, people who moved from 420 430s to 710 720s, really proud of them. You can go read the reviews on GMAT Club. So let's see how we build their study plans. And so and in e-GMAT we build technology where we have a PSP or a personalized study planner. It inputs your GMAT score, it uses a neural network, and then comes up with personalized abilities and a personalized plan. And you can do it in about 7 to 10 minutes. Okay. So we're going to look at Rafaela. Rafaela started with a 600, and then she went on to score a 730. She's currently studying at Harvard. Okay. So she took a Sigma X mark, she got a 600, and these were her starting abilities. What do you observe from this? What do you think are her strengths? What do you think are areas that she needs to work on? Okay, quant. You be a bit more elaborate within quant. Strengths are SC and CR. And you can use RC, you can use AR, you can use ALG, essentially for short forms. So same, when you look at this, you see SCNC are real good strengths, 89 percentile, 92nd percentile, and RC 39 percentile is a problem area. Arithmetic, really bad with 15 percentile. Algebra, geometry, 50th percentile, that's pretty okay. It's a very okay starting point because you've not prepared anything, you're still as good as half the population. You're at the average point. So you're at the director level, if I may really call it, in arithmetic. Okay. So we added this data to PSP, and these are the target abilities. Now what you see over here is that we kept the SC and CR. I can see our quant and verbal score. Okay, the quant and verbal scores were right here. Q40, Q36. Let me just see if I can change the colors. Q36 and V36 were a quant and verbal scores. Okay. So we added this data to the PSP. She wanted a 730. Okay. And so what the PSP did, or a personalized study planner, did was that it kept the SC and CR because it tries not to recommend scores upwards of 90th percentile unless and until it absolutely has to, because you can never be certain about, once you get above a 90th percentile. Okay. Then it says, let's kind of see how much we need to improve our RC to get a verbal score to a V42, V43. And then on the quant side, we wanted to get her to a Q48, Q49. And you can really see the strategic difference, what it did. It first improved her algebra geometry score to an 83rd percentile. And then it only improved her arithmetic score to the point that it was needed, which is 57th percentile. Now, why is this important? This strategic decision of getting to that 57 percentile in arithmetic, how does that help you? How does that help you? Right off the bat, on the very first day, if you know you're going to score 57 percentile on arithmetic, you know you don't need to answer the hardest questions in arithmetic correctly. Right? Because it's not aiming for 80th percentile there. You're okay with 57th percentile. because you're making up for that weakness in other areas. Okay, and that decision can help you plan your study. You don't need to become a genius on your weakness. Yes, Google does not, when it thinks about the next quarter, it doesn't think about getting increasing the revenue of its office division to $15 billion. It focuses on its advertising division, because that's where the profits are going to come from. Okay, and that's why it's really strategic to it's really important to be strategic about such decisions. Really, really important. Okay, now we know our starting abilities, we know our target abilities. Let's kind of figure out what our time estimates are. Okay, and where is she going to spend time? Now, to tell you where do you spend time, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a mini tutorial on how do you go about building ability. If you're an e-GMAT student, your PSP tells you a lot more about this. Whenever we want to learn something, and this is not true just for the GMAT, but it's true for learning anything, even when you're trying to learn a sport, or if you're trying to learn a certain stroke in a sport, you go through these three stages of learning. One is you learn concepts and application. You really learn the right way to do things. You learn, and if you're mastering a stroke, if it has multiple things that need to be done right, if your eye has to be in a certain position, if your head has to move in a certain way, if your arm, if your knees have to bend a certain way, it ensures that you need to do this. So that's kind of your learning concepts and learning application. You first need to do that. Then you need to get to a stage where you've learned concepts and application well, you master that application, and you do that. At the end of it, you reach to that 70th percentile level, which means you're almost as good as 70% of the people worldwide if you do this judicially. Once you do that, then you get to a stage that you have to refine to perfection. Then you get to that 90th percentile in this case. Okay. When you do these things, when you do the learn concepts and application, um, you get to a 55th percentile ability. When you master application, you get to up to at least a 70th percentile ability. And when you refine to perfection, you can get to at least a 90th percentile ability or higher. What do we call this stage? And in the e-GMAT learning platform, there are very, very specific activities you do during each of these stages. What do we call this stage over here? Any e-GMATer? Cementing. Yes, we call this cementing. You've got to go through specific cementing quizzes. Where do we do this stage over here? Learn concepts and application. Where do we do number one? In the core courses. Yes, in the core courses. You do the SC in the SC course, you do CR in the CR course, you monitor each activity score, you ensure that you hit 80% or higher in those activities, and where you don't, you go back, revise them right then and there. Okay. And then where do you do this? Refine to perfection. Scholaranium, yes. Mocks and Scholaranium, absolutely. Okay, specific tools, specific analytics built for each of these stages of learning. Okay. So really important you understand this. Why? Because different ability buckets put you in different stages. Let me just go back. So if your starting ability is 30th percentile, this is where you start with. Your starting ability is upwards of 60th, 65th percentile. You do this, or you do a selective stage 1 and then you go to Scholaranium. Your starting ability is 75th percentile or higher. You actually start with stage 3. You don't need to worry about stages 1 and 2. What is Scholaranium? Scholaranium is, does anyone want to answer what's Scholaranium? In very simple words, it's the world's best quizzing platform that you can really get. In a more elaborate terms, it's an exhaustive set of database of e-GMAT created questions with phenomenal solutions, with analytics that no one else even dares to offer. Okay, it can tell you within SC how well you're doing in modifiers question. It can actually tell you within SC, within modifiers, how well you're doing in medium versus hard questions. It can tell you within SC, within modifiers, within hard questions, how well were you doing in the last 40 hard questions, and how has your accuracy improved in the last 20 hard questions. It can tell you within SC, within modifiers, within hard questions, are you consistently performing at a certain level, or does your performance go up and down? It can answer those questions for you. Something which even a private tutor will struggle to do. And of course, you can build custom quizzes and all of those things in the world. That's something that we did in 2016. These analytics is what we've been building over the last couple of years. Now, Silly says, isn't it better to work on your weakness, though? Yes, you've got to work on your weakness, but Silly, let me just explain something to you. That's a question here. Let me share a whiteboard in this case. So, and this is something I call this the non-linearity of learning. So Shelley's question is, isn't it better to work on your weakness? Yes, it is. You've got to work on your weakness. But let's say you are at a 25th percentile point over here. This is 25th percentile. And you have to go to a 90th percentile over here. Okay. And then you are at a 60th percentile in another subsection. And you have to go to a 90th percentile over here. Can anyone tell me, in terms of the ratio, the difficulty level of achieving, if this is 1 and this is 2, how much more difficult 1 is compared to 2, just in terms of human endurance and difficulty level? How much more challenging is 1 compared to 2? Now, how much more if you were to really put a ratio to it? 1 is going from 25th percentile to 90th percentile. Second is going from 60th to 90th percentile. So people who are saying 3 times are close. Okay, this is actually even more challenging than that. So within e-GMAT, we kind of do it very analytically. So we have something called ability band. So if you're at the 25th percentile, you want to get to a 50th percentile. That's one ability band. Then if you were then we have another ability band at 80th percentile, and then this. So you're going from you're crossing 1, 2, and then you're kind of going towards the end of third band. Okay, this is a difficulty level of 7 for us. Here you're going from this point, middle of this, and crossing that. This is a difficulty level of 2.2 over here. So the ratio is about 3x or so. Okay, so it's 3x more challenging to go from 25th percentile to 90th percentile. It doesn't mean it's going to take 3x as long. It's probably going to take about 50% longer to do 1 than 2. But in terms of human endurance, in terms of your probability to do this, it's about 3x more challenging. Now, if you have to do this because you are at such a low ability level, absolutely we'll make you do that. But if we can get you to your target score without doing that, I would rather do that, because in the end, that's what we care about. Does that make sense, Sally? Okay. Does that make sense to you guys in terms of that difficulty level piece? Okay. Because each one of you is pressed on for time. Let me just be very clear. Okay. Now, again, remember we said if you have starting abilities and there are high starting abilities and you don't need to study certain subsections, I'm going to now elaborate this on a UI over here. This is what the legend says. This is something that you need not study. This is something that you need to study. This is something that is not required, because you're not supposed to get to that higher ability score or so. Okay. So for Rafaela, this is what was important. Because she was really good in SC and CR, she didn't need to study this. She had already achieved this. All she needed to do was maintain that ability level. In RC, she had to start with stage 1. In quant, she had to start with stage 1. But again, in arithmetic, she didn't need to do refined to perfection. This was not needed. But in algebra geometry, she needed to do that. So right on day 1, she had this map for her. She knew that this is where her energy is going to be spent. Okay. Does that study plan make sense, given who Rafaela is? Okay. Now, Ayush, very, very different candidate. He actually came to us after he'd taken the GMAT twice. He had applied to Columbia. Columbia had waitlisted him. They said, we love your candidacy, but you need a higher GMAT score if you want to come to us. And that's when he came to us. And even though he had taken the GMAT twice, he didn't have an ESR. So we said, please, let's get an ESR for you. So we took a Sigma X mock. He got a 670. These were his starting abilities. Observations here. What are your observations in this case? He's an engineer, yes. Really good in quant. He was there in quant. He had a Q50 to begin with. SC and CR are his weaknesses. RC, excuse me, relative strength. Okay. We added this data to PSP. We said he needed a 750. This is what the PSP came with. You really have to get to that 94th percentile in SC and RC. And CR, we can kind of hold it back. Let's maintain that arithmetic and algebra. Okay. All right. Then we generated time estimates. Again, remember the 3 stages of learning. This is what Ayush needed to work on. In CR and RC, that's where most of his energy was spent because he had slow abilities. In SC and CR, I'm sorry. In RC, even though he was at an 80th percentile, we said, hey, why not master application? It's about a 2-day process given your ability. And then let's refine this to perfection. And in quant, let's just focus purely on maintenance. Let's not study anything over there. Let's just practice questions left and right overall. Probably a CAT aspirant. No, he never took the he never took the CAT. He actually just prepared for the GMAT, and then if memory serves me right, he was a Manipal graduate, so his quant was pretty okay to begin with. Okay. Now Ayush versus Rafaela. When you think about the amount of time they're spending, Ayush spent 3 weeks in SC, but 2 weeks in CR, whereas Rafaela hardly spent any time over here. And the PSP does generate these estimates for you as well. When it comes to RC, Rafaela spent about 2.5 times as much time as Ayush did. When it came to arithmetic, Rafaela spent most of her time there, and you can see Ayush hardly spent any time there. Okay. With regards to studying things, Rafaela had to start from basics in arithmetic, algebra, and RC, and Ayush had to start from basics in SC and CR. Okay. Can you see how this personalization would help you get to your target score faster? Okay. Each one of you can get that. And when you do this, you channelize your energy in the right direction. You're very focused as to what you're trying to achieve. If right on day one, you want to achieve 90th, 94th percentile ability, in a certain subsection, you study with that attitude. You study with the attitude to learn. Because the only way you're going to get 94th percentile ability is if you have an attitude to learn, not if you have an attitude to answer questions quickly. Okay. Okay. And this is really important. Why? Because a score of 730 or higher can do many things for you. Over the last 3 years, we've delivered more 700 plus scores than any other company in the world. And when you really do that, you get access to students and you can collect data that pretty much others would be hard pressed to collect. So last year, we actually reached out to 500 of our students who we knew had done well. And then we kind of asked them about their background. We asked them about which schools did they apply to, where did they secure admits from. We also asked them where did they get scholarships from. So, and this allowed us to compile this rich set of data. Okay, and what we found that essentially, when it comes to M7 admits, yes, 740 or higher score doesn't guarantee an admit, but essentially, if you have a 740 and higher score, you have twice as high a chance to get into an M7 school as you would have if you had a score in 700 to 730 range. That's a very phenomenal jump overall. Okay. Also, when it comes to scholarship, um, people who had a 740 or higher, 45% of M7 admits had a scholarship. 82% of top 20 admits. Now, these T20 are outside of the M7 schools. 82% of them got a scholarship. How many of you are aiming for a scholarship? How many of you are aiming for a scholarship? Okay. That 740 score is absolutely essential. Okay, so overall, 62% of all M7 and T20 admits got a scholarship. The other interesting data point was what happens when you have a 760 versus a 740. Because we had anecdotal data that a 760 gets you more scholarships, but we didn't have statistically significant data. And this was really, really challenging. Why? Because, to get statistically significant responses, you need at least 80 people in each of the buckets to get to a confidence level of 90% or higher. And so we got that. We actually had to scrape to hit that 90, that 80 number in the 760 or higher bucket, because essentially you needed people who got scholarships with a 760 and or higher score. And so we had to, and who were willing to really give us that information, because when it comes to scholarships, people are really, really personal about them, because they don't divulge people this information to friends either. Which is why you see very few scholarship case studies outside of e-GMAT. So what we found was that those 20 points add up to about $35,000 of incremental scholarship money on an average. In lower tiered schools, so in a school which is ranked 12th, 13th or higher, that is the amount of money that you get is significantly higher. So about $80,000 more. In M7 schools, amount of money that you get, incremental scholarship money that you get, is more around that $25,000. So M7, that 760 did not add a whole lot, but if you're going to, let's say, a UCLA Anderson or a Ross, or if you're going to for example, Darden actually does do that. Then the 740 versus the 760 made a huge difference overall for people. Okay. Okay. So hopefully this motivates you. And here are some anecdotal stories of people. There's a guy who got a full ride from Ross, Keenan Flagler, and as well as from Wharton. He actually took the GMAT, I think, 3 times to get to a V44. And a total scholarship amount of about $350,000 or so. Here's a guy who got 5 full rides, including a scholarship which paid him $1,700 a month from, I think, from a T20 school, if I remember. It wasn't an M7 school. It was around that rank. Ohio Fisher, yes. Um, One of our former students scored a 750. Akansha, she got 180K of scholarship, including a fairly significant scholarship from Wharton. And she actually hosted a session with us. She was very thankful for that. Anyway, she talked about how she got into Wharton and a bunch of other schools, and how did she approach scholarships. Is it possible to get such high scores in the first ones? Absolutely. I think so. We say absolutely because within the GMAT platform, if you hit the metrics that we have internally, you'd get that score. As I said, your mock is a representation of your preparation. Okay. And if you go to the e-GMAT platform, on the homepage, there's an admits and scholarship page. You can actually get to it and you can see scholarship journeys worth 10 million plus. It's the world's largest collection of scholarships. Okay. And again, since the last 3 years, we've accounted for 3 out of 5 700 plus scores reported on GMAT Club. GMAT Club does a really phenomenal job of kind of cataloging these scores out overall. Um, and so just to represent this, everyone else combined has accounted for 40% total. We've accounted for that 60%. And this data, you can go to GMAT Club's review page. Those 700 plus scores are organized chronologically, and you can really say go back to the last 3 months, last 6 months, and be able to verify this number as well. When it comes to quant scores, way more quant scores than in Q49 plus scores than anyone else. Okay. All right. Divya says, what's your expert opinion to score 700 plus with an R1 application? Timeline, I'm bad at quant, fairly okay with RC. Divya, depends on how many hours you need. I need to know that baseline score to tell you that. Okay, I have no idea about e-GMAT approach. Will there be recorded classes and not live classes? So first of all, we do not do classes. We used to do live sessions. People didn't like them after they went through our learning activities. Um, and we don't call them recorded classes because they're not. Every learning activity within e-GMAT takes in about 100 hours of investment. So about 30 minutes of learning activity is about 100 hours of SM investment. And essentially it is tracked, it's architected within a learning architecture that progressively improves your ability. And the beauty of that is because it's tracked, you get feedback as to how well you performed in that learning activity. So it's not, a live session that I'm doing right now. For me to do this session is very, very simple, because all I'm doing is talking to a presentation. Yes, I have my insights, but I'm talking to a presentation. But if I were to convert this into essentially a learning activity, it'll probably be about 7 learning activities. But for me to convert this into the e-GMAT way of conversion, it'll probably take everyone, starting from me to our e-learning team and our tech team, but 400 to 500 hours to do that. And we are not available on cell phones. I mean, you can use it on cell phones, it works beautifully, but I would recommend not using it. When you use a cell phone, tablets, not a problem, it works beautifully. But when you use cell phones, you're only using about 20% of your visual cortex, which means that you're not using your complete brain. Your visual cortex has the biggest set of nerve cells going to your brain. Um, and and um, and and so for learning, it's not optimal. Let me be very clear. But for revision, yes, you can absolutely do it. You're going from your work to back home, you can absolutely do it. If you truly want to learn while traveling, I recommend using a tablet or getting a video card. No recordings at all? No, absolutely not. We don't want to give you recordings. Okay, I'm getting a lot of requests which are very specific to you. I mean, if you have any specific requests, write to me at rajat@e-gmat. I would be happy to address those. If you need adjustments in your study plan, we can do those. We have a phenomenal strategy team that does that. There are no live classes. Let me just be very clear. So there's no point of missing a class. Okay. How do we access the PSP and the materials? Just log into egmat.com. Okay, I think you guys are asking some very specific questions. Is there a coach included? Okay, EG matters. I think you should answer these questions. Live classes and strategy support. If you have any doubts, how do those doubts get answered? EG matters. If you have a doubt, how do they get answered? You just send an email, or you write it on the. If you have a subject matter doubt, write in the forum, and we will respond to it within 24 hours, and you'll get a detailed response. Should a student enroll in the course attend the weekly webinars? If you're studying CR, then I recommend attending the CR webinar. But if you're studying SC, do not attend a CR webinar. You'd have access to the recording of that. And you can see our students responding. Just write to support at e-GMAT. You'll get a coach. Every response when it comes to strategy, the strategy expert will look at least 500 data points before they send a response to you. If you need a study plan, if you need a more refined plan, they'll give it to you. Video or theoretical explanation of a doubt, whichever is suitable. We create about 100 videos a week in response to our students' doubts. Trial period, just log into e-GMAT. You don't need to pay anything for a trial. And by the way, if you buy the course, you don't like it within the first 7 days, ask for a refund. Okay. And again, if you have any other questions, guys, I think write to me at rajat@e-gmat. We'll be happy to answer those. Okay. So, and Anushta, you can also write to Rajat@e-GMAT, and we can answer your question with that. So 620 to 750 is about 160 hours of effort, just at a very high level. Okay. Again, questions. Do we provide admission assistance? We don't. I'll tell you why we don't. Because we have about 7,000 students on our platform, and there is no humanly possible way that we can hire enough admission consultants to provide admissions assistance. If you need, I mean, there are companies that do that. They do a mediocre job of doing both admissions and the GMAT. We do just one thing, and we are phenomenal at it. That's why we get those results. And we work with some of the best admission experts around the world, and we can recommend those to you because of the volume that we have. Okay. So yeah, if you want to do a trial, just log into e-GMAT. You can do that. If you want to buy the course and see how it works for an entire week, you can do that. And I see a seminar on tips and tricks. There are no tricks that work on the GMAT, let me just say. And every tip that you need is there in the course. How do you check the baseline score the way I mentioned? Take a Sigma X mock. Here is a link to a Sigma X mock. You see number 2, concept level feedback. You can see how the way we give feedback, how we build technology to give feedback. Okay, guys, I'm going to clear this over here. I want to tell you a bit about how do you learn effectively. Okay. Do you want me to do that? Because it seems you guys want your questions to be answered. No, I love the fact that you have so many questions about the e-GMAT offering. You're interested in it, but that wasn't the whole intent of this webinar. So if you have questions about e-GMAT offering, you can write to me. We can schedule a session. I will have some of our strategy experts do this, or they'll respond with a personalized video. But since you have me here, you might as well spend time on how do you learn effectively, because you know how to build a study plan now. Yes. How many of you want me to answer your questions on e-GMAT? How many of you want me to kind of learn effectively, to kind of teach you how to learn effectively? Learn effectively. Okay. Okay. Second one. All right. Let's do that. And then towards the end, I'll keep some time. That may be very, very clear. Okay. But I hate breaking momentum. All right. So stuck at 60th percentile. How many of you are stuck at 60th percentile? Quite a few of you are, are actually even below that. And what I'm going to prove to you is when you think about being stuck at a point, it's about, a lot of it is about the consistency of learning, but there's also a really big component about how you approach the learning process in general. Okay. And what you focus on while learning. So just to really tell you what 60th percentile is, about 80,000 people are at the 60th percentile or higher. So if you're at a 60th percentile, there are 80,000 people who are at the same level or ahead of you. We're going to take an example of SC, but the same principle is going to apply to CR, RC, and so on and so forth. That 60th percentile guy has spent about 40 hours learning. Their starting ability, or that girl was 30th percentile. Their capability to learn is very similar to that of a person who gets to the 90th percentile. And this is something that I want to emphasize on over here. Each one of you has the capability to learn. You may not have the same confidence, but when it comes to gray matter, just by virtue of you being human, we've evolved to be able to learn this. Now, there are some of us who have much better habits than others, who can study for long periods because we've been doing that. Others haven't been able to do that. So we have to build that ability. But the capability to do this exists within us. A 90th percentile guy is amongst the top 20,000 students. That person also spends 40 hours to get to that 90th percentile score, and starts from that same 30th percentile ability and has a very similar capability. Okay, so how they approach the sentence correction aspect is very, very different. A 60th percentile student, and this is something that I want you to focus on, thinks of GMAT SC as a test of grammar. They focus on learning subject verb, verbs, pronouns, and so on and so forth. For them, the way they go about approaching questions is where they're using splits as a primary method. For them, they say, okay, if splits don't work, let's kind of focus on figuring out what the meaning is. Okay. When they're learning, they actually go through that learning phase of learning concepts and learning application in about 12 to 15 hours. They go up, read up a book, or they go read notes, or some watches videos that don't give any feedback, and then they spend a majority of their time practicing questions. So majority of those 40-45 hours are spent on practicing questions, and they practice hundreds and hundreds of questions in SC. Anyone over here identifies themselves with this person? Lots of you. That's not what GMAT SC is. That is what it does not test. A 90th percentile guy understands that GMAT SC is a test of how sentence structures lead to a meaning. And there are about 200 major sentence structures that are tested on the GMAT. And then they learn those sentence structures and the combination of those. And now those sentence structures may have definitive errors in subject, verb, verbs, pronouns, and modifiers, but they focus on learning just the definitive errors. For them, meaning is the primary approach that they use to solve questions. When they read a question, they focus on understanding what is it that the author is trying to communicate, then they worry about figuring the errors out. When they're learning, because they're learning these 200 sentence structures, they get a ton of feedback, between 80 to 120 feedback points as to what their strengths are, what they have they learned properly, and where they need a bit more reinforcement. Because of this, in that stage one, they spend about 60% of their time, and as a result, they need only about 40% of their time in stage two. Now, they're still spending the same 45 hours. Both of these folks are spending 45 hours. It's just where they're spending their time is very, very different. So when you look at the 60th and the 98th percentile student, you see uh, 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 very, very different focus areas. Okay. Can you see that? They're fundamentally approaching GMAT preparation in a very, very different manner. And that preparation is going to lead to a different outcome. Munindra, your question is very relevant. She started from a V17. She's been able to get to V36. Phenomenal. Can you reach a V42? Absolutely. And that's where you're in that stage 3 of learning. You're going to refine to perfection. If you're an e-GMATer, write to the support team, and they'll figure out where your weaknesses are. They'll use collineum data. They'll put you on a last mile push program and help you get there. Okay. And the piece which is there, if GMAT SC truly tests those 200 sentence structures, there's no way you've learned properly if you get feedback only 7 to 10 times. Okay. So I'm going to demonstrate that difference in approach through an SC question. I'm going to put in a poll question here. I want you to answer this SC question the way you would answer a typical SC question. Here are the answer choices. I want you to first select still solving before I show the question to you. I want about 40 people to select still solving. That way, when you choose an answer choice other than still solving, I know that you guys are done with this. 32, 33. I want 40 people to select still solving. I have about 100 people in the webinar. Come on, 40 people. 37, 38, 39. Couple of more folks. Okay, I have 40 people there. Okay, good luck, guys. I'm going to mute myself. Here is the question. All right, about 70% of you are done. Get those answers in. But 80% are done as of now. Three, two, and one. All right. I'm going to end the poll. Last six, guys. 6 folks who are still solving. Choose an answer. Come on. End poll. I'm going to broadcast results. This is how you guys polled. 42% of you chose choice C. 21% of you chose choice E. 18% chose choice D. Very few people chose choices A or B. All right. So how did you feel after this question? All right, good. I think this one was easy. All right, confusing options, got reality check, rough, hard difficulty level question, mixed feeling. All right, we'll see. And one of the things that you really just see, it's a difficult question. Statistics, fewer than 50% of you got it right. So this is a difficult question. But then what you'd really see is, even though this is a difficult question, and that's something that's true for every difficult question, if you do the fundamentals right, there's a definitive answer, there's a definitive correct answer, and every other answer choice is wrong for very definitive reasons. And it's 100%, every other answer choice is 100% wrong. So one of the things how many of you tried to use splits on this question? Not me, okay. Not me. Okay, it's very difficult to use splits on this question over there. Why? Because you have answer choices starting with the church coined, while with an ulterior motive, while a few experts claim, and then choice D again had the church coined. You had this contrast word but here, and 4. C did not have that but. Splits is where you're looking at the differences in answer choices and really just saying, hey, if you're grouping them and then really saying which group's correct. That's what splits is. Okay. Okay, so very difficult to use splits on this, and it's purposely. I mean, there's a reason why we chose this question, because we wanted to force you to try the meaning based approach overall. Because I want to explain to you why the meaning based approach works, and it works beautifully on every question. Questions where splits work, questions where splits don't work. And by the way, when you're talking about a 700 level question, splits are not going to work on any question, even when they seem like the answer choices are splits. Okay, so in terms of the meaning-based approach, what we do is we kind of read the sentence slowly, we pause, and we understand what is it that the author wants to communicate. We don't worry about the errors in the sentence, we worry about getting the intended meaning first. Okay, that's really important. And so to understand the intended meaning, we actually use a sentence structure approach. So you see this entire long sentence is divided into sentence structure, and it's mapped in a way so that we can really see which sentence structures map to which other ones. Okay, so what we really see, and I'm not going to go into the detail over here, but there are 3 aspects that this sentence wants to communicate. The first aspect is there are 2 claims about the celebration of February 14th as Valentine's Day. That's there. Okay. Then the specifics of those two claims are that the church designated it with a specific motive, and the second claim is that it was to honor Valentine's death or burial. Now, claim number 1 is by a few experts. Claim number 2 is the more prevalent belief. It's by a different group of people, essentially. Okay, these are the 3 aspects that the sentence wants to communicate. Now, while reading the sentence and while selecting the answer choices, how many of you took care of these aspects, were aware of these aspects, that this is the job that this sentence is supposed to do? If you missed a certain aspect, then please select that. If you miss more than one aspect, this is a multiple response question. You can select multiple responses as well. Okay. And once I get a few more responses, I'm going to do broadcast results so you can see which aspects did people miss, and you'd really be able to correlate the aspects that people missed to the choices they chose and their reasons for making a mistake. And once you figure out the reasons for making a mistake, you know, to correct those mistakes is fairly simple, and which is when you lead to that, you get those high scores. So I'm going to broadcast results. You can really see a lot of people missed aspect 3. Some people missed aspect 1. Some missed aspect 2 as well. But aspect 3 by itself is a winner. And this is why most people got this question wrong, because they missed aspect 3. Okay. And this is very, very essential just to do that reality check. And this is where solutions come in play. You've already done that. If you understood all 3 aspects, you were conscious about that, then you know, that's great. You understand the meaning. Now, meaning is not the reason why you'd make a mistake on this question. It's probably going to be grammar. If you did not understand all of this, and if you weren't aware of them while solving the question, then you need to really build that skill set of strategic pausing and understanding the meaning. Really important. Okay. So once we've understood what the author wants to communicate, let's kind of understand the errors. And one of the things which is the errors, when you look at is claim, doesn't have a subject. When you look at is, it doesn't have a subject. These 2 verbs exist, they don't have a subject. Here you have a subject verb pair, here you have a subject verb pair. Because we are missing subjects, there's a problem with this sentence, and hence choice A is wrong. Okay. So we've done the meaning analysis, we figure out what's the error in choice A. Let's now go and move to choice B. This is choice B. You can see that over here. Again, I've repeated choice A over here, and this is the choice B, which you guys selected. A few of you selected. Let's look at choice B. Choice B says, while with an ulterior motive to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a few experts do claim that the church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day. Now, this choice, grammatically correct, not a problem. The problem really is it changes the meaning. Who has the ulterior motive here? It is the few experts. That's not what the author wanted to communicate. Your claim one was that the church had an ulterior motive, not those few experts. Because it changes the meaning, this choice is wrong, even though there's no grammatical problem with it. By itself, choice B communicates a proper meaning. There's nothing grammatically wrong with choice B. However, it communicates a meaning which is different from what the author intended to communicate, and hence choice B is wrong. Okay. Let's look at choice C over here. And choice C was really popular. This is how you guys polled. You can see which choice you chose. Choice C says, while a few experts claim that the church coined the date February 14, blah, 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 their more prevalent belief. Who does their refer to? Who does their refer to in this? The same group of experts. Is that what the author intended? No. Because of this choice is wrong. People who chose choice C, can you see where you made a mistake? Can you guys also see that aspect 3 is what was the most popular thing that people missed, and that's what caused the error? It's a different group of experts, yes. Let's look at choice D. Choice D is also incorrect. It's probably the hardest to reject. If there is one close choice in this question, it is choice D. Okay. The choice D says the church coined the date February 14, blah, 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 as claimed. It uses this expression as claimed by a few experts, but its celebration on this date is to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial, the more prevalent belief. Now, it tests an aspect which is rarely tested very, very commonly on GMAT RC, on hard GMAT RC. I won't really talk about this. Okay. Now, Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. If you were to read this sentence, and if you were the one who actually made this statement, in this, are you communicating information? Tell me, and are you making a claim here? There are two, you can say YY, YN, NN. I want you to read, because these are both yes, no. Don't say communicating. Put y, n, ny, howsoever, whatever you believe. I want you to answer these questions, this one and this one. Are you communicating information? Are you making a claim here if you make this statement? And there should be a that here because there's a missing subject. That Apple is the market leader is claimed by Forbes magazine. The answer is YN. Are you communicating information? Yes. Are you making a claim? No, you're not making a claim. Should you be blamed if it turns out that Apple is not the market leader? Absolutely not. Why? Because you're merely communicating information that hey, Forbes magazine said that Apple is the market leader. You're merely telling someone that piece that Forbes magazine mentioned this. Okay, you're not saying you agree with it, so you're not making this claim. You're not really asking someone to believe what Forbes magazine said. You're merely communicating information. Is this clear? Why are you communicating information? Because prior to you making that statement, no one knew that Forbes magazine made that claim. Why aren't you making the claim? Because you're not saying, I agree with Forbes magazine. Okay. And this is a really important piece. Why? Because there are times when your boss will tell you to go and do some research. And if you're not, you may go and read a bunch of information. And if you're not certain about it, what you're going to really say is XYZ said ABC. And essentially what you're really saying is, I'm merely communicating information, boss. Make sure you use your judgment as to whether you believe that claim or not, so that you don't get blamed. Now let's look at another statement. Apple is the market leader as claimed by Forbes magazine. In that, what do you think is happening? What's happening here? The answer to this is why. Actually, 2 and 3 are linked. If you're making a claim, you would be blamed if it turns out that that claim is wrong. What you're really saying here is that Forbes magazine made the claim that Apple is the market leader, and I agree with that claim because of the word expression as claimed. You agree with Forbes. Okay. So if 2 is Y, then 3 is automatically Y because 3 and 2 are linked. Okay. Let me just create another, share another sentence. Aren't you not backing Morningstar's recommendation? You are. So when you use when you use as, you're backing that claim. Okay. In the original sentence, the author, this is the original sentence, the author was merely communicating information. Okay. And whereas in choice D, the author is backing the claims, which is why choice D is wrong. This is why it says its celebration on this day implies that the author is backing the claim. Which gets us to the correct answer, which is choice E. Choice E says that the church coined the date February 14 as Valentine's Day is claimed by a few experts. Okay, but the more prevalent belief is no one's the author is not backing this. He's saying the more prevalent belief is it is celebrated on this date to honor the anniversary of Valentine's death or burial. This is satisfied. This is satisfied. This is satisfied. There's no grammar error. So because of this, choice E is the absolute correct answer. There's nothing wrong with choice E. Now, why do people reject choice E? Some people say, hey, what's that weird that doing up front? I don't like this. Some people really just say that, hey, there needs to be a that over here. And some people say, is claimed as passive, so I'm not going to worry about this choice. Again, there's nothing wrong with starting a sentence with that. Yes, it's not common. There's nothing wrong. It's a perfectly acceptable English construct. As long as you're expressing the meaning and as long as the meaning's expressed properly, there's no ambiguity towards it. It's absolutely okay. Okay. Now, when you think about why each of these answer choices is wrong, choices A, B, C, and D, here, if you chose choice A, you failed to figure out that there were missing subjects. And that's because of sentence structure. Choices B, C, and D, all grammatically correct. However, they had meaning issues. Okay. And which is where you've got to really make sure you follow the meaning-based approach when it comes to answering such questions. For how many of you this was very different from the way you approach SC questions? Right? This is how you should be approaching GMAT SC. Okay. Also, can you see how many, just in that one question, there were in the answer choices, there were just so many different ways of connecting sentences. There were so many different connectors that were there, and the kind of analysis that you had to do to extract the meaning from each of the answer choices. It was so enriching. Okay, that's very, very important. And that's where sentence structure play comes in over here. Okay. Now, how many of you are concerned about this? You're saying, hey, man, this is great. This seems logical, but am I going to be able to apply this process in time? Okay. Now, would we have the results that we have if this process didn't work? I'm not talking about just as good or even twice as good as the average prep company. I'm talking about one company generating 60% of all 700 plus scores, and there are 7 other companies that account for the remaining 40%. And that will also tell you this is one of the reasons why we account for that, because the approach is very different. When you attend the CR session next week, the way we do visualization, you're going to find it's going to be very different. And by the way, there are no tricks here. I'm not trying to teach you shortcuts. I would never teach you shortcuts. I would never tell you, hey, there's a secret thing over here which only you would know and others won't. No, this was a very logical approach to things. And if you apply this well, you, your friend, and everyone else out there will be successful. Because as long as you apply this well, you're going to actually get to that end goal. There's no reason why you would fail. Okay. But to be able to apply this well, you've got to have the right foundation with regards to breaking sentences down into sentence structure. You've got to learn how to apply this method again and again and again. And when you make mistakes, you need that feedback. And even when you do this, to get to that 90 or 95th percentile, you need to fix every gap that's there. And you need to go through those stages of learning. And that feedback is only going to get you to that 90th percentile, because each one of us has our natural strengths and our natural weaknesses, and it's only when we monitor how you're doing, and the only way we can monitor this is using technology. It's then that then we would really get this. Okay. Again, how do we give feedback? If you go to our homepage, you have a video over here which talks about 500 points of personalized feedback. You can really see how that feedback's personalized. And you'll also recognize that the only way this is possible is using technology. Technology is one of our biggest areas. I mean, over the last 10 years, we've spent close to $10 million building our tech platform. And I can tell you we're only half done. Okay. Just in the SC course, you get about 150 points of personalized feedback over here. Okay, which is what generates the success. All right. With that, I've come to the end of the webinar. I have a bunch of questions here. Let me give you the session PDF. Let me give you a bunch of the other, a few other links that you guys were asking for, so that you can get that. So GMAT Focus Edition, I'm going to share. So if you click on this, you'll get, a lot of links to GMAT Focus, but I'm also going to share some other links over here. If you want to give a mock test on GMAT Focus, that's over here. You can do that. For those of you who need the session PDF, let me share the same with you over here. You can download the session PDF over here as well. Okay. Questions. Now, formally, we are at the end of the webinar. It's about 2 hours. We are done with it. If you have any questions that are still unanswered, I'd be happy to answer those. Put those questions in the Q&A pod. And in the short answer pod over here, guys, I'd like some feedback on the webinar and some takeaways. And of course, I'll be sharing the recording with you in another 6 hours. Ardal says, would GMAT focus on the current GMAT? Let's not call it the former GMAT. It's still the current GMAT material. Need different materials. There's going to be a huge overlap. So quant and verbal are going to be pretty much identical. Of course, in verbal, you won't have SC. In quant, you won't have geometry. But everything else, which is there in the current quant and current verbal, would remain the same. The IR piece is going to be completely elaborate. Completely different for us. We have a very exhaustive IR course right now. Has about 120 examples, but we are ripping that apart. Next Thursday, you'll see us launch our GI and TA courses as well as our MSR course. Just in that, you'll see us presenting about 300 examples and exercises in there. We will have launched our complete IR course by the 10th of August, which would still give you about 2.5 months before you can actually take the GMAT Focus exam. And that will, the overall entire course will have about 500 odd questions, which includes examples and practice problems. And then within the next 20 to 25 days, we'll release our Scholaranium, which will add another 1,000 questions and mock tests. Okay. So that's on GMAT Focus. If you're planning to take the current GMAT, should you give a focus mock? If you're planning to take the current one, you can take the focus mock for actually one really good reason. That one thing that the GMAC did with the focus edition mocks is actually there are 3 good reasons for you to take it. And that's, by the way, a great question. I'd never thought about it in this way, but your question forced me to think about it. So 3 good reasons why you should take the GMAT focus mock, at least the free ones. If you're taking the current GMAT. One is that the GMAT focus mocks have a completely new set of questions. I mean, those questions aren't anywhere. They're not in the current official mocks for the current GMAT. Those questions are not in any of the other exercises. So I spoke with a few of the folks that I know at the GMAC, and they said, with the focus, we wanted a completely fresh set of questions. We had so many questions that we had not launched. So with the mocks, they've launched those questions. So definitely do that for those questions, number 1. Number 2, with the focus mocks, you get your percentile scores. So you'll get your percentile scores in SC, you'll get your percentile, in CR and RC, which I think is phenomenal because you do that. Okay, of course, you won't have SC, but it still is very valuable, that data point. The second thing is on the quant side, you'll get your percentile scores in arithmetic and algebra, and you'll get other insights as well. So the timing insights that you get, they're phenomenal. So absolutely, do that. A great question over here. And so I think definitely take those mocks. They're free mocks, and overall, in the focus official mocks and number 2 mock test will tell you that you'd be able to do that. Now, if you want to take the Sigma X mock, for those of you who've not taken the Sigma X mock, here's a link to the Sigma X mock piece over here. You can get your SCCR and RC starting abilities if you want to build a study plan. That's the mock that I'd recommend that you take. Are there any current discounts on the e-GMAT course? You can write to rajat@e-gmat.com, and someone from our team will get back to you. Which one is better, the current or the focus? So both of them are very good. Let me start with this. The GMAT's way better than any other exam that exists, not just for MBA, but just from a logical standpoint. If you're looking at which mock is going to be a much better prediction of your performance in the business school, it's going to be the Focus Edition. Then Focus Edition is the future, and we actually did a student survey, and this is something that we suspected. Uh, Let me just share the result. Anyone over here who was a part of the survey over here? The student survey that we did. Anyone over here who was a part of the student survey? So we did a student survey asking them why would they want to take the Focus Edition if they do want to take the Focus Edition, and you'll see the results over there, student survey, top left hand corner. And a few folks want to take the Focus Edition because they believe consulting and corporate strategy folks would want to see their Focus Edition scores. Okay, you can see about data from about 1,000 students. There's a live dashboard in there where you can see the data as well. So that's something which is there. Kahu says, what I want a free mock test for the original GMAT. So Kahu, bottom left-hand corner, you see Sigma X mock. Item number 1 is what you want to take. Okay, that's your mock test. Let me actually. Here is the response to this. Can you have my email? Absolutely. Mocks 3 to 6 are very good. So absolutely, if you've exhausted your Sigma X mocks, you can do that. You still have questions left in Scholaranium, you can simulate a mock and we can tell you what you would get. But yes, mocks 3 to 6 are very good. In fact, if you write to me at rajat@e-gmat, you can buy those mocks from us at a discount. We get a discount from the GMAC. We buy them in bundles, and that's true for any other student. I don't know what mocks 3 to 6 are selling for right now, but I think usually they're about $90 to $100 or so. From e-GMAT, you can get them for $60. So write to me if you want to buy mocks 3 to 6. Okay. When should the GMAT exam be taken? How many months ahead should you start preparing? So again, depends on how long you need, but usually I'd say between 3 to 4 months is ideal. That way, even when you're starting with a score of 500, you have ample time. Okay. Free mocks, free mock you should take right away. And the Sigma X mock, take that right away. Do we provide notes? We don't, because notes are very personal. You should take notes by yourself while using the e-GMAT platform. Use any note platform. I recommend Evernote if you use Evernote, but Microsoft OneNote is also really good. It allows you with all sorts of tagging. You can actually take notes within our platform and they're tagged to the activity. We have a note feature within our platform as well that you can do. But definitely take notes. And there's a reason why we provide summaries, but we don't provide notes. Let me just be very clear, because you need to make your own notes. If you've subscribed, how many of you have subscribed to our YouTube channel? I'm going to put in a yes, no poll here. If you've how many of you have subscribed to our YouTube channel? If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, we share 2 or 3 success stories every week. These are raw interviews where people really talk about how they prepared for the GMAT, what did they struggle with, how did they improve their metrics, what are the strategies, what are the personal side how did they address their personal self? Many of you ask, how do I study while working full time? They talk about that in great depth. And it's the world's largest collection of GMAT success stories, by the way. You'll see anywhere. And the reason why I recommend that you do this is because, as you do this, a lot of the questions that you ask, how do you take notes? They talk about how they take notes. They talk about why they take notes and how they leverage those notes towards the fag end of their preparation, or right before taking any mock. So you'd see or hear from people who've actually done well on the GMAT. Okay. The sessions are only live if yes, what time? So as an e-GMATer, you don't need to attend any session. Let me be very clear. There's only one session that I want you to attend, which is our onboarding session, which happens every Thursday. But we have these free sessions just to tell you what the e-GMAT method is. And for us, it's also a way to get in touch with a few more e-GMATers who don't write to us over email. And they happen on Saturdays and Sundays. So we have a verbal or a strategy session on Saturday at this time, 7:30 p.m. IST, 7 in Pacific, and a quant session exactly at the same time on Sundays. Okay. All right, guys. With that, I want to thank everyone for joining me. What about the beginners level? When do before the GMAT and where to start from? Again, same thing. Start from using the e-GMAT course. Let me just share some success stories of folks who've recently gone from a 400 to a 700 overall. If you want to see, this is just recent. There are many more that's out there, but here's an example of someone who's gone from a 440 to a 710, and that's something that's there. Arunima says, since the essay question won't be there in focus, is that a concern? So first of all, no one cared about the AW. Let me just be very clear. The essay questions that B schools have are their own essays, and in the Chat GPT era, they're enhancing those questions. You can see Harvard has new questions, ISB has new questions that you can't really get good answers from Chat GPT. So that's something that's there. But the fact that AW is gone is not a concern as well, because it wasn't used at all anyway. And now you see on the GRE also there's no AW. Essentially, in the world of ChatGPT, AWA doesn't make sense, especially if you have your CR and RC scores. So Arunima, that's not a concern at all. Let me be very clear. Do I recommend purchasing the OG? Yes. Purchase OG 2022 or 2023, depending on which exam you're taking. So that's something which I want to make sure. And here is our analysis of the official guide. But here, let me just share this. We don't suggest any books just because books don't give you feedback. They're not detailed enough. Books just teach you theory. They don't teach you application either. I mean, we're talking about 2020s here. I I don't see a reason to refer to books when it comes to learning. There's just online platforms are become so phenomenal. Technology allows us to do so many more things when it comes to ensuring that you learn the right material. In Quant, for example, we build custom courses for you. It's something that books can't do. I mean, the entire uh, uh, learning is completely customized to how you are reacting to the platform. Try doing that with Pace. Let me show you what Pace does. Hi there, this is Raghav. So if you watch this video over here, you can see what Pace does. And this is something that we did in 2021. Does the difficulty level of the GMAT focus subsection differ from that of the current ones? No, it doesn't. Okay, I have questions in host questions, which was not questions for host, but my questions to you. Let me look at this. How good are mocks from other sources like Manhattan? So they are okay. That's my opinion. Manhattan mocks will give you a reasonably good estimate. For the current GMAT, I've not looked at their focus edition mocks. Let me just be very clear. They aren't the most exact, in my opinion. So if you, but if they really say, if they say you are at a 700, you may be at a 740, you may be at a 680. So in that sense, they're okay. They're verbal slightly better than their quant overall, but for me, the big piece is, you take a mock test, you want to get insights as to what to do next. They don't really do a good job over there, in my opinion. So that's something which is there. But if there is a set of mocks that I would recommend outside of e-GMAT and official, it would be Manhattan. I would not recommend any other mocks. Is EMBA more sensible than the GMAT road for a working professional who has 10 plus more years of experience? It depends on what you want to do. So an executive MBA, and I'm purely answering this from the US context and from the European context. So an executive MBA in the US and in Europe is for individuals who are already on the management track. They have, let's say, about 45 to 50% of management skills. They need to acquire the other 50% to go further on in their journey. So executive MBA in the US is for people who are going to continue in the same career. A lot of the times it's sponsored by your organization. A full-time MBA, on the other hand, is for career changes. Now, you may have a decade of experience. If you're looking to change your career, if you don't believe you have half the management experience that a typical MBA already would get, then I would not recommend an executive MBA. I would recommend a full-time MBA because it's designed for career changes. If you want to go from tech to marketing, if you want to go from tech to corporate strategy, if you want to become an executive in tech, a full-time MBA would be huge. Now, a full-time MBA in India is very different. A full-time MBA in India is really, an executive MBA in India with the likes of what IIMs offer, IMA and IMB, but by using the GMAT, that's very similar to actually a full-time MBA in the US, where you have professionals with 5+ years of experience. So an executive MBA in India is like just the same as a full-time MBA in the US. So depending on where you're looking for, the answer changes. Are Sigma X mocks available for the GMAT focus version as well? They will be available when you need them. You'll need them after September 15th, and yes, they'll be available way before that. Will the current GMAT be discontinued? Yes. Q1 is when we expect the current GMAT to be discontinued. How can you attend more webinars? Just register for them. How long does 500 to 700 take? I mean, typically you're looking at about 250, between 250 to 300 hours of effort. So, as long as it will take you to put in those 250 to 300 hours of effort. Yeah, Q1 2024. I'm so sorry about that. Is when the current GMAT would be discontinued. I think the MBA mocks 3 to 6 have already answered. Yes. Indian MBA versus a foreign MBA, which one would I recommend? So let me just say this, that a good MBA, an MBA from a top 20 school in the US and a top 10 school in Europe is going to be at least 3x as effective as the best Indian MBA. And again, some people may really be surprised that I'm saying that. Some people may say, hey, I'm biased. The way I would recommend doing this is just look at the kind of research that professors are doing at USB schools. And I'm not asking you to go to Harvard or Stanford. I'm asking, go to Ross. Look at what those professors are doing, what kind of industry exposure they have. Look at UCLA Anderson. Look at Berkeley's Haas School of Management. Look at the professors, their accomplishments, and then do the corresponding thing for IIM, A, B, C, and ISB professors. Now, again, I'm not saying those MBAs are bad. They add really valuable skills. I'm just comparing two good options, and I'm saying one option is 3x as good as the other, just purely from a knowledge and a skill development standpoint. The second thing where I really, really like the US MBA, and some of you may not like it, is that when you do an Indian MBA, your placements are really simple. Companies come to the campus and you do that. Now, yes, you get a job, and then everyone loves security. We like putting our money in FDs, but FDs only give you so much return, and the stock market gives you way better return, and it's been proven. In the same way, a US MBA teaches you to become a hunter rather than take food that's given to you. Once you go through the USMBA placement experience, you will never starve because you will have learned how to hunt. You will have learned how to network. And those are extremely critical skills. Okay. The third thing is scholarships. I mean, a lot of people think the US or a European MBA is really expensive. It's not. If you focus on the right things at the right GMAT score, get scholarships, it's not. And the returns are fabulous. So US versus USA, Europe versus USA. I've been asked this question so many times. I think I should write an article on this, and I will. So both have their pros and cons. I've lived in Europe. I've lived in the US. I'm now back in India. I actually returned back to India about a month and a half back, just because the e-GMAT team had become so big, and I couldn't work my nights anymore. So I love Europe for the life it provides, and for the people in Europe and the culture in Europe. I hate Europe for their tax system and the fact that salaries don't go beyond a point. Okay, that's Europe for you. But if you need a great life after an MBA, Europe is a good place. It's just you won't have as much money in your pocket. Okay, the US. In terms of a country that accepts foreigners, there's no better country than the US. I mean, something that comes close probably is the Netherlands, in my opinion. But essentially, there's nothing better than the US. When you go in the US, you won't feel that you are being considered as an outsider. Okay. You'll make a lot of money. Salaries there are incredible. And you get to keep a big chunk of what you earn. So, with regards to building wealth, there's no country that is as good as the US and that offers as good a life as the US does. And again, I'm kind of excluding Qatar because yes, you can make money over there, but life over there is not as good as what it is in the US. The kind of freedom of expression that you have, the kind of entrepreneurial energy that you have in the US, is unparalleled there. Okay. Now, the downside in the US is that you don't get a green card that easily. Let me just say that. But you can work for 10 years, make a ton of money, and then you can move anywhere in the world. So, what's my academic background? I think those of you have not guessed it, I'm an engineer by profession. I did my undergrad from REC Calicut or NIT Calicut. Then I did my master's from IIT Delhi. I was one of the gate toppers. I worked as a researcher for a company that some of you may know of, Nokia. I kind of made one of the first 3G and 4G simulations. This was the year 2000. I worked as a researcher for about 4 years. Then I said, whatever research I was doing was just so far out, and then I had no control over the destiny of what I was doing. So I said, I need an MBA. That's when I did an MBA. I had a fabulous GMAT score, went to Babson on a full ride. Post my MBA, I worked for Honeywell, where my job was to build businesses by leveraging technology that their labs had built. I did that for about 5 years, built about 4 businesses, and then I said, I want to do something of my own. And that's when we started e-GMAT in 2011. So we've been doing that since then. What about studying in the UK and shifting for work to the US? You could do that as long as you go to a top school in the UK. You go to LBS. That's it's phenomenal overall. But go to a top school in the UK, and that's absolutely okay. Do you recommend BCom undergrad to work for some years and then do an MBA? Yes, I do not recommend. Please do not do an MBA directly out of school, out of your undergrad. Get some experience. Understand why you want to do an MBA. It'll be much more beneficial. Okay. With that, and hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I enjoyed, your company. And it was great to have you. Check out the free trial, see if e-GMAT's the right platform for you. If you have questions, write to me. And I look forward to seeing you on e-GMAT.com or in the algebra session tomorrow. All right. Thank you and have a wonderful day or wonderful evening if, like me, you're in India.